Hello, I'm Candy Simonson, and I'm going to talk to you today about being a pantser or a plotter. A guide to plotting and what really works for you. We're going to look at a few other authors that have used a variety of means. So, what is a pantser? Are you a pantser or are you a plotter? When you write a story, are you a pantser that just writes down anything that comes to your head? Or are you a plotter? Well, let's see. Do you write by the seat of your pants? If you pick out anything out of your head and just write it as it comes along, having no plan, then you're a pantser. Thoughts are everywhere or nowhere. But maybe you structure it step by step. Is this you? Do you outline? Do you sit in a mall and study people? Do you dream about the events or brainstorm? Do you research places and do a lot of research? Do you ask what-if questions? Maybe you don't know. Well, you see, good fiction doesn't just happen. It has to be designed, and it must have structure. A writer needs a plot just as much as a baker needs a recipe. So you can daydream, you can brainstorm, you can research. You might hear characters' voices in your head, and yes, I do. You might imagine what they look like, and yes, I do. And I might even dream about the places they visit and the events they do. You see, you need a goal for your book, and that's where a plot comes in handy. A plot is more than just a piece of paper. It's like a road map. You see, a road map doesn't keep you from getting caught in a thunderstorm or taking a side trip. It doesn't even stop you from getting caught in potholes or changing your mind. But it does get you to your destination. Same with a plot in your story or book. It has to have a hook, has to have a predicament or tension, and then it has to have more tension, more problems added to the characters. So many more tensions that you are getting to a turning point, the climax, the middle of your story. And then you start to resolve and work towards a solution. Till finally, at the end, you tie all loose ends up and you finish the book with a solution or a resolution. It could be good, it could be bad. So what you need to know when you're writing, is it character driven or is it action driven? You see, to uncover the plot of your story, don't ask what should happen in your story, but what should go wrong. You might know this author, Eleanor Marie Robertson. She was a young woman that during a snowstorm had two rambunctious boys. The chocolate was gone, there was no kindergarten, and she didn't know what to do. So she wrote a book. She started anyway. She sent it off to Harlequin, and with no chocolate around, she wrote another book. And they were rejected, and rejected again and again, until Harlequin created a sub-publisher, an imprint called Silhouette. Her book was accepted there. You might know her better as Nora Roberts. She says she's a born pantser. New Yorker calls her America's favorite novelist. And she has written 225 romance novels and 195 New York Times bestsellers. She says all my books are character driven. Character is key. Character is plot. Character is everything, and the story wraps around them. So make them real. Make them feel. Make your reader cry. Make them laugh. Make them want to help that character and root for them. So I have a character template. I encourage you now to either take a screenshot of this, pause your video, take a screenshot and print it out, or you can just use a piece of paper and write down things as we go along, because this is a workshop. You can also download this at casimonson.com. So right now, pick a number between 1 and 25 and put it in the box beside character. If you didn't download the template, just write it on a piece of paper, write down your number. One way that an author can use a plot system is to use a whiteboard. That's what this author did, David Elrod. And you can see that he used his whiteboard to list all his characters, their ages, where they lived, the setting, his 18-year period, his time span, and his themes. He has his arc, knowing what they will accomplish, and he has his characters. Another author that used a whiteboard was William Faulkner, and it looks like he used his bedroom wall to win the Pulitzer Prize for a fable in 1954. I'm not sure my husband would be so happy with me writing on the wall. Okay, you had a number written down. Select that number and match it with one of these numbers here. This is your character for the story that you are going to write. If you didn't write a number down, randomly pick one. Sometimes you just need to use whatever's handy. For Aaron Sorkin, the author of A Few Good Men, West Wing, and The Social Network, it was a cocktail napkin. He was going to college and needing money to support his college and writing. He was working in a bar. His sister, at that time, was on a 3-year stint with JAG, the U.S. Navy Judge Advocate General Corps. She was telling him about a case that she was going to Guantanamo Bay to defend a group of Marines who came close to killing a fellow Marine in a hazing operated by a senior officer. Sorkin quickly wrote down the notes and details of what she was telling him and decided to write a book about it. He named it A Few Good Men. It became a bestseller and soon was a movie about the court-martial of 2 U.S. Marines charged with the murder of a fellow Marine. He wrote this down on a cocktail napkin and made millions. Sometimes you use a notebook, theme paper, whatever you have handy, and that's what David Foster Wallace did. Maybe the way most of us do this. You might recognize this guy. W.C. Fields, in 1940, needed some money. He was broke. He dug in his pocket and he found an old receipt from the grocer. Thinking of an idea, he wrote it down quickly and went to Universal Studios and pitched the idea to them. They bought it. They bought it for $25,000. He named it Never Give a Sucker an Even Break. He was the star of the show. And the whole plot, a down-and-out man sells an outrageous story to a movie studio and he makes millions. And yes, he made millions from a grocery receipt. So if you don't have paper handy, what do? You get your phone out. You can have Supernote Recorder, which is a free app, or most phones have a voice recorder now. Take your phone and take pictures of places and people that you see that might spark a story. Here's one I snapped from a neighbor's place. I saw this fence. It became the fence in my first book, Love's Journey Home, where 7 children had to be perched until their father got home. Another picture I took not too far was an old shack, and that became the shack that they lived out of. And the book cover to Love's Journey Home. So use your phone for notes. You can use Evernote, which is another free app, and it is a virtual phone book, a notebook for phones. Or send an email message to yourself. Easy to do, and you keep your ideas in place. Okay, pick a number between 1 and 25. We're going to give your character a flaw. They need to have something that is their own problem that keeps them from doing things. It might be a flaw that lets them stand out. I'm going to give that to you in a few minutes. Mind maps. Thoughts everywhere and nowhere. This is an example of a pantser. He's writing down his ideas everywhere and nowhere. Norman Mailer wrote a fictional chronicle of the CIA in 1991, and this is his mind map. Here's another mind map from James Lepine, who won the Tony Award in 1987. He wrote all of his characters in a color code, and so he can figure out where they're going, what day it is, when they attack, when they meet. He's got how they interconnect and their interaction with each other in his mind map here. Okay, the number that you selected, match it up with one of these numbers here. This is your character's flaw. Susan Collins again, that wrote The Hunger Games, she used her tension roadmap to decide where to put the most tension in her book, The Hunger Games. We looked at her roadmap before for characters and where they would be, but she also adds this. So maximum tension, high, medium, low, very low, and she decides which chapter to put her tension. This is the problems, the predicaments that your antagonist and protagonist face. Tension builds with your problem number 2. So you chose a number, correlate that with the number on this chart. This is the second problem that your character will face. Some people like to use Postit notes, like these two ladies. They wrote Heart of Ice under one name, P.J. Parrish, and it's actually these two ladies here. They used all their Postit notes to use their plot and timeline. Postit notes is another way to do it. Helps you pace chronologically, helps you get your scenes in order, and not make needless mistakes with historical events. It can be a tried and true outline, a beginning, middle, and end. This guy used it as Postit notes and drew drawings on his wall, it looks like. Pick another number between 1 and 25. If you have a tried and true outline, you have a beginning, you have the character's goal, you have the middle, you have the highest emotion or achievement with 3 or 4 twists, and it turns into a conflict. And then you have the end of your book or story with the logical solution or reflection. Every chapter or every story should end in a solution or reflection. I did this with my Love Looks Back outline and my book 2. My book 2 it spans 2 weeks, where my book 1 spanned 10 years. This one I had to organize by days of the week to figure out the better chronological view. It helped me to keep my historical events in order, and it helped me to be more productive and write faster. So ask yourself, what should the character gain or lose at the end of each chapter? Well, here's something worse that happens. Here's your problem number 3. You're going to have your character go through 3 obstacles, 3 problems. Whatever number you wrote down, choose it now, or just pick one out of this list. The Snowflake Method was designed by Randy Ingermanson. I don't know if you ever chose that, but he's saying begin with a log line, one sentence that describes your whole story or your whole book. That is really difficult to do, but if you can begin with a log line, you can turn your idea into a story. So you start small and then build up until it looks like a full story. So one sentence becomes one paragraph becomes one page, and then one page becomes one chapter or story. I decided for my book, my first one, my log line was 7 children, abandoned by their drunken father, must separate to survive. So here's your story. You've received a sizable inheritance, but you must travel a far distance to get it. You're not sure how you'll get there. Your goal of your story is to get your inheritance. I've given you your character. I've given your character a flaw. I've given you a place to start, where they are from, and I've given your character 3 problems they must overcome to get there. Now, it's up to you to write your story. Should you choose to accept this challenge, you can bring it with you to next mentor hour at Springfield Writers Guild, or submit it online to Springfield Writers Guild at gmail.com. How will you plot it? What's the best method? Will you use a chart or spreadsheet, index cards, timeline, template, storyboard? You see, it really doesn't matter, because however you want to do it works for you. And everyone has their way, and that's okay. So happy plotting. I hope to see your story. Thank you for listening.